now listening to Protecting Your Nest with board-certified family medicine and obesity medicine specialist Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com. Welcome to the Protecting Your Nest podcast. I'm really excited today because today we are going to revisit the conversation of toxins. As you know, the P in the ROPE acronym reminds us that to achieve metabolic health, we must remove and avoid pollutants, also known as toxins, from our lives. Dr. Wendie Trubow was a previous guest on the podcast and is the author of her wonderful book entitled Dirty Girl. This is such an important topic that I have asked her to rejoin us so that we can go a little deeper on the subject of toxins. Now, during our last podcast discussion, we talked about the following. We talked about why doctors who were conventionally trained, like myself, don't talk about toxins at all. We talked about how her and her husband were able to start their detoxification journey. We also talked about how she approaches patients as they attempt to detoxify, as well as should cost be a barrier as you start your detoxification journey, as well as what toxins are and what are the physical signs of toxin exposure. So it was really a great conversation, and that's definitely an episode I want you to circle back to, and that was podcast episode 75. So to make sure that you get more from this great expert, we have decided to look at her book, Dirty Girl, and we're going to go chapter by chapter to determine, what can we walk away with from that book, and it'll probably inspire you to get the book for yourself or your friends or family. And our doctor, as a reminder, completed her medical residency in Obstetrics and Gynecology at Tufts University. She's the president of the National Celiac Association, and she formed the 5 Journeys membership-based organization that incorporates functional medicine and her husband's unique approach to what they consider to be the 5 core aspects of health: physical, chemical, emotional, social, and spiritual. So as you can see, she's well equipped to help us heal. And I'm so happy to have a part 2 discussion with her on the Protecting Your Nest podcast. As we walk through this book, I ask that those who are enjoying the book, enjoying this episode, to really start to think about what are the 1 or 2 things that you want to do to change in your life that'll help you detoxify and achieve the health you desire. And with that, Doc, I welcome you to part 2 of the Protecting Your Nest podcast.
Tony, thank you so much for having me back. I love the work that you do. It's like a kindred, committed human to improving the lives of others. So thank you for having me here. It's great to be back.
Yeah, I just wanted to add more value. Me and my wife are on a journey as we speak. I had a previous guest. We talked about natural toothpaste. We're working on, what we're going to do about our water, what we're going to do about our air. And I think everybody's kind of overwhelmed. And I just think that as we give more information about how to do that, that'll help not only my audience, but me and my wife as well. So I really appreciate that you're focused in that area. I am so grateful that my functional medicine training has led me to like-minded clinicians like you. And I think we'll have a great discussion today. But before we dive into your book, Doc, let's share with the audience, how would they approach your book? How do you suggest they integrate the teachings of your book into their daily lives?
Well, it should be like the Holy Grail, of course.
Of course.
No. Okay. So here's the thing. You're in this and I'm in this. And what I would say is it can feel intimidating and sometimes a little overwhelming as you start to approach cleaning up your life, cleaning up your health, optimizing. The goal is that you feel freaking amazing. Mm-hmm. And that's like, if you really don't feel well, there's a huge gap there. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at our book, obviously you're not going to teach it like the Holy Bible. It's not the Bible. But it's a good roadmap for starting to clean out your life, clean up your health, clean up your exposures so that your liver and your gut and your kidneys aren't so overwhelmed with how many toxins and stressors they've gotten, because really all we want to do is be healthy and have a great life and love our friends and family and maybe leave some generational wealth to make our offspring's lives happier and healthier and so enrich in their lives. So the book provides a roadmap to start to do that, because if you don't have your health, then what's the use of any of the other stuff?
Yeah.
So how you treat it is like good ideas that can save your life if you're ready, if
Mm.
it's worth it for you, if that's the game you're playing, right? You got to figure out where you are in life. Not
Yeah.
everyone's on that path.
That's right. And I think like it's just like when I give my patients my handout, which tends to be more, low carb, but it's not telling them what to eat necessarily. It's telling them, here's some options. Try to pick the options in this little, part of the handout. Try to avoid these options. But I think with the book, it's nice to have, okay, here's a list of things you need to do. And you decide what to do first. And again, as I started, I said, let's find, as we talk, if you're listening or watching, just find some areas that you say, yeah, I could probably do that, and start there. Get some wins. Just like when me and my wife worked on getting out of debt, we tried to find quick wins. What's the credit card with the least amount of money? And let's pay that off. And then
Yeah.
we can take the credit card and cut it up and celebrate a win. So I want everybody to do the same thing. Cut up something in your life that's a toxin and celebrate it as a win. So let's start. Let's start with chapter 1.
Sure.
The title for that was Dirty Girls Go Bald. What an interesting title. So in other words, dirty girls, we joked in the last episode how, I don't have any hair, so what's the big deal to me, right?
Right.
So, but anyway, you talked a little bit in that chapter about microwaves, right? And man, who doesn't use a microwave? So let's start by talking about using a microwave, not using a microwave. Why should people be concerned about microwaves?
Okay. Let me count the ways. Okay, so here's the thing that I'm going to say. If you're using a microwave and that is your only option, don't listen till we go on to chapter 2. Okay? Cuz that's, I think, is that a line in the Bible? Like help me accept the things I can't change and the wisdom
Right.
to know the difference. So if this is something you can't change, don't listen.
Yeah.
If it's something you can change, here's why you should listen.
Mm.
So typically what you're microwaving, for the vast majority of us, we're microwaving something in plastic
Mm-hmm.
that's been pre-prepared by someone else, or we're microwaving it in paper that's lined with plastic so it doesn't stick
Mm.
or degrade. So when you microwave plastic and food is touching it, that those plastic particles, otherwise, think about BPA. A lot of people have heard of that. That's a tremendous endocrine disruptor. And I know you're really
Mm-hmm.
committed to resolving and improving diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
And diabetes is an end result of tremendous endocrine disruption. So these plastics disrupt our hormones. And so women in particular are at higher risk of estrogen dominance, and estrogen dominance leads to fibroids. It increases your risk of estrogen dependent cancer like breast cancer, uterine cancer. And so it's really important that we don't microwave in plastic, because that is just one really clear way that we're getting exposed to toxins right from our food. Not even
Mm.
counting if it's been prepared by someone else. The oils are typically not that healthy. There's higher levels of sodium, there's higher carbohydrate levels. There's a lot of issues with the food itself, but the microwaving it causes it to transmit um, toxins to us directly.
Yeah. That's so I'm almost thinking there's some people who are holding their breath before you answered the question, right? They may be feeling better because you're focusing on what we cook the food, in what we cook the
Mm-hmm.
food on. So if I have a plate that is not has plastic lining on it, it won't. Would that make us feel a little bit better about the microwave?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you
As
can,
long, I
so
mean, sometimes you're in a bind, right? Like I will
right,
say, I just have to acknowledge the sun has shifted and I look like I have a halo.
right,
So I can't quite reach the blind. Would you like me to leave the screen and go
right.
deal with it? Or do you care, or do you want me to deal with it? What
That's
works for
fair.
you?
Right. I
Do you want me to go pull the shade down so I'm not haloed?
Yeah.
Okay. Pause me for 1 sec.
Okay. Okay. I love when we're having insights that are not black or white. I like insights that are um, based on our ability to uh, level set and decide what's gonna um, matter the most. So I think it's really important as we hear thoughts and comments that we think about that. So
All right.
all
All
right.
right. I thought I found it, and it's really weird. It's in the gap between my shades.
Oh, okay, cool. So it's
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, we're just going to be backlit like that for a couple
Yeah,
minutes.
that's
It'll
okay.
pass.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're yeah. Yeah.
In fact, it's getting a little bit better already. Okay. So back to the microwave. I would say if you cook the food yourself, you know the oil quality is good, and you just really want it warm, that's a lesser offense than if you're buying a pre-made meal from somewhere and it's in a coated paper or plastic, or you're microwaving it and you don't take it out of the plastic because you don't want it to splatter. These are all really problems because it's putting the plastic into our food. So that would be a huge time I would avoid the microwave.
All right, cool. So, okay, that's good to know. And I think for a lot of people, you're right. Some people are going to be using it regardless. And ironically, a lot of people who use a microwave may not have access to being able to have dishes the
Right.
traditional dishes. So it's kind of a double whammy. So that's really helpful, and I hope people can kind of walk away with that understanding. And as we have a discussion, guys, if you think of questions that may come up if you're enjoying this on YouTube, just put some questions in the comments, and then I'll make sure that we get those questions answered as well. So let's go to chapter 2. Chapter 2 is kind of entitled Sex and Stress, and in this chapter you talk about breaking from social media and other distractions and the importance of cleaning up toxic relationships. I have my rope acronym, and the R is for relationships, and that's because I also agree that your relationships need to not be toxic and that they need to add value to your life. So,
Mhm.
man, I don't know that anybody who picks up your book would be we'd be talking about relationships. So, I want you to just share your thoughts on why the relationship concept was put in your book as a potential toxin.
It's such a great question, Tony. I would agree. Nobody thinks about relationships and how powerful they are. But if you think about the Blue Zones book that looks at people who are long lived, and not just long lived, but long health spans, not just long
Mm-hmm.
lifespans, what's found is that they all have a common theme running through them. Dan Buettner's book shows that community and relatedness to others is almost critical to have a long life. And so when you're looking at how do you improve your health, if you have relationships that are toxic, meaning you think that they're toxic, you don't enjoy the person, you feel disempowered or in some way beaten down or lessened by being with them, that's not just emotional, that has a physical toll that it takes on you. It impacts your adrenals by putting you into a state of fight, flight, or freeze. And when you're in that state of fight, flight, or freeze, your cortisol goes up. That elevated cortisol says to the liver, which is responsible for a large majority of your detox, hey guys, or hey guy, we're busy. We're about to be eaten by a lion. Because although you know it's just a relationship, your liver and your adrenals only know danger. And when it experiences danger, it stops the process of detox. So it shuts it down. It also shuts down your digestion. So anytime you have this interaction and you get all stressed and you get like those twisty feelings inside and you're like, oh, I hate this. How do I get out of it? It actually does have a negative impact on your body. So it's every once in a while I have had someone in my clinical practice who I've said, I really want to help you. And
Mm-hmm.
your marriage or your job, it's only ever a marriage, a living situation, a job. Those are the categories, is so toxic that it can't help you until you get that taken care of, because it can have such a negative impact. And so Every once in a while it'll happen, but it's really important to remember how impactful that can be on your health and not to glaze over it, take it for granted, because it really can, it can tank you.
Yeah. And I'm happy you mentioned the blue zones because it's, clearly one of the longest lived civilizations. I've learned also that in Hong Kong, which is a little bit more animal based, not a little bit more, they eat more meat per capita than any other
Oh,
city.
really?
Yeah, they do.
Interesting.
And this is what's interesting. I had to learn this because when you were a vegetarian for 8 years and you're like eating animal based, it's the opposite. You have to justify those choices, right? So,
Right.
if anybody searches longest lived civilizations, you'll always see Japan and you'll see Loma Linda, California. They tend to be more blue zones, but the Hong Kong folk who eat 2 steaks per person on average per day, how do they also live long, right?
Wow.
And let
To
me
a
tell you,
day.
yes. Now this is the thing that makes it
That's a
amazing, and
lot
why
of meat.
I want to bring it up. Right. The reason why it's important is because it may not just be the plants, just like the Dr. Ornish study, which didn't just do plant based. They did meditation, they did all of these other things. So the message here is and what they have in Hong Kong, as in these other cultures that live long, they have relationships that are important. They focus on marriage in a way that's important. They get into the outdoors. So if you're trying to heal metabolically just by focusing on your diet and that's it, you may do better for sure, but you're missing the big picture, which is why I have a nest and a rope. We got to think about these other things as well, and it may be as important or more important to have relationships, to get out in nature, to move your body, and all these other elements, and then you may be okay. So it's hard to tease that out because it's like a soup, right? You don't know what part of the soup did it,
It's blended too. It's a blended soup.
and they
They're
work
all,
together.
yes.
They're interconnected. One of the terms we learned in our functional medicine training was how things are interconnected. So I really appreciate you reminding us about relationships, and I just want to let other people know who have, because we're going to have people who listen to this who have different approaches, and I want to make sure that they're understanding that it's a big picture approach that matters. Now, let's look at chapter 3, and it's entitled "Eat, Drink, and Be Toxic." And you talk about the water supply.
Mm.
You talk about the importance of reading labels, and of course, I'm big on that. You talk about avoiding things like mercury and other toxins, but you talked about you just talked about plastic, right? And so when it comes to uh, things like plastic and mercury and things like that, talk a little bit about why these things can harm us and why we should really start to kind of understand where they're coming from.
I also, before I get to that, I want to talk about the impact of water, because a Massachusetts study in 1989, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
literally another century,
Mm-hmm.
almost 40 years ago, showed that 1 in every 6 deaths could be tracked back or attributable to air or water quality. I know. I know. And so, as we're looking at how can we be healthy, what we're drinking and where it's coming from and what's in it
Mm.
has a huge role in our health. And so, before we even get to plastics and mercury, the recommendation I have for people is, to the best of your budget, filter
Mm-hmm.
your water.
Mm-hmm.
We live, I just posted this on Instagram. I'm on Instagram at Wendie Trubow MD, and I'm sure you'll put that in the show notes. And I just posted this literally recently, where we changed our filters. We changed them every 6 months for
Mm-hmm.
one and every year for another, based on the filter people's recommendations. But we noticed our pressure was going down. So we changed the filter, and I posted a picture of a new filter, which is beautiful, perfectly white.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one, which was rust colored and just
Mm.
full and heavy. And we live in a neighborhood where we've tested our water, and it's pretty darn clean.
Mm-hmm.
Like, our water, we drink it for years, and we have a point of use water filter. But at some point I said to my husband, when I found out all this toxin stuff about my body, I was like, we're getting a whole house water filter, because I gotta get rid of the perchlorate,
Mm-hmm.
which is chlorine, and I gotta get rid of anything that could be possibly impacting me. And and it's amazing the difference. So it's really important to the best of your ability. That means if it's a Brita, go for it. If you can go better than a Brita, go for it. If you can get a Berkey
Mhm.
countertop, great. If you can get an installed point of use, get it. If you can do a whole house, do it. Do it to get
Mhm.
the highest thing that your budget will allow. And at the very least, no more plastic water bottles.
Mhm.
It's really hard on me because
Yeah.
I don't like to waste things,
Mhm.
and I don't like to harm the earth. And when I travel, you can't take water on the plane,
Mhm.
and those water filters are often dysfunctional. So I end up
Mhm.
buying water. So I get home and sometimes I haven't finished the water, and I have this moral dilemma: like, do I drink the water or do I just throw it out? And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to
Mm.
throw it out. So I had an
Mhm.
unopened one on my counter for a couple of weeks as I debated this, and I finally realized, like, I'm throwing it out. I
Mhm.
don't want to drink the hormone disrupting agents, and I don't want it. Like, I don't even know what's in that water. I have no idea if they filter it well. So water quality is really critical before we even get to plastics and mercury.
Mhm.
So water.
Right. And I think the other thing about water before you go there, and I had to really, it's so funny. You like change the toothpaste, and then you're like, "What about the mouth rinse?" Right? What about what
Yeah.
you rinse your water, your mouth with? And
Yeah.
then I got to get in the shower. So what? I'm screwed. So I think having,
Yeah.
because your skin is going to absorb. So I
Yes.
think it's so important. Again, we don't want to overwhelm people. We just want them to have an awareness of, I hadn't really
Yeah.
thought about that. I need to think about this, and to the degree you can have a house filter, do it. And if not, you can get the portable filters, which are affordable now, and you can do it that way. But it's still better than, even in Chicago, we have a lead problem. And to be honest with you, it's like I made an entire video about it, and it's just they're not talking about it. And we
Mm.
have a lead problem, and it's just scary. So
10
again, we
million
can't.
homes still have lead
Exactly.
pipes.
Right. And it's like, and you have to take responsibility for yourself, because if you wait and wait and wait for the powers to be, you may be waiting for a while. So I suggest do your own thing to the extent you can afford, but don't feel, like I say, there's levels to this, and you stay within your budget. But go ahead. Any thoughts about the mercury and plastic?
Yeah, tons. I mean, if you know me by now, you know I have opinions about pretty
Yeah.
much everything, right? So,
Right.
so okay, let's talk about mercury. Mercury, the sources of it, major sources: silver fillings, which thankfully they mostly stopped putting in people. But if like, I just got mine out last year, so if you're old like me, you have silver fillings if you had a filling. Or high mercury fish. Just like us, fish don't detox mercury. So the big predator fish, as they eat the littler fish, they eat the mercury also that those little fish have, and they
Mm-hmm.
aggregate it. They keep
Mm-hmm.
storing it. So when you get to that delicious ahi tuna,
Mm-hmm.
Chilean sea bass, mahi mahi, swordfish, these heavy, fatty, the fish that are big predator, heavy, fatty fish, they have mercury in them that essentially one serving is enough for about 6 to 12 weeks for most of us.
Mm.
And a lot of us are eating it every 1 to 2 weeks. So we're getting a
Mm.
much higher dosing. Back to the mercury fillings. If you have silver fillings, 50% of that filling is mercury. It never stops off gassing,
Mm.
ever. So every time you eat, drink, chew something, swallow, whatever, it's off gassing. And because you think about what's close to the mercury, the mouth, thyroid is close to the
Mm-hmm.
mouth. It's often why people with mercury fillings have autoimmune disease that shows up as thyroid, because the thyroid is right there. So as it enters
Mm.
the bloodstream and the body, here we are, the lymph is going right by the thyroid.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so mercury, if you have mercury fillings, I would recommend getting them out safely.
Whew.
If you eat high mercury fish, I would recommend stopping
Mm-hmm.
and substituting the smaller fish. You're still going to get the plastic and the mercury, but you're not going to get as much. And hopefully your body will be able to process it as you get it. And then the third source of mercury is your parent, your mother, because it's almost inevitable that your mother got exposed to mercury.
Mm-hmm.
If you're older than, I want to say 35 ish, you had mercury thermometers. Your
Mm-hmm.
parents had exposure to mercury. They had the mercury fillings. They had the mercury thermometers. They ate the fish. So
Mm-hmm.
they got and mercury is also still used to process like from corn into high fructose corn syrup. And so don't even get me started on glyphosate. So when you process that corn into high fructose corn syrup, you require mercury to do it. It's in the processing part of it. So when you get the high fructose corn syrup, you get a big fat dose of mercury and glyphosate. So another source that's sort of little known is high fructose corn syrup. And then the people you came from. So you get 50% of what your mom had. With each pregnancy, she detoxes a little bit more. So if you're like me, the first child, I got a higher body burden than other people got.
Wow.
All right, wait, plastics. Okay, that's mercury.
Yeah.
No, we're always speechless with mercury.
Yeah.
And then there's plastic. So plastic is everywhere. You literally cannot go through your day without having exposure to plastic. Think about your toothbrush. You referenced toothpaste. Your toothbrush comes in a plastic tube, most likely, and is made with, your toothbrush has a plastic handle, plastic bristles, and you eat the toothpaste that comes from a plastic bin. My microphone has plastic on it. I'm sitting on a vegan leather chair, which means it's plastic. There's plastic in my ear headphones, my recording information. I'm sure my clothes have some stretch to them, so there's plastic in that. You can't get away from it. So you eat plastic when you eat fish, they have plastic in them. We eat on average about a credit card. Regularly, we eat a credit card. A credit card's worth of plastic. It's disgusting.
Oh my God.
We're going to get exposed to that, and those are endocrine disruptors. So the goal is, at this point, we are so entrenched with plastic. So you want to start to pick the big battles. The big battle: don't drink from single-use plastic water bottles. Don't drink. Don't heat up your food in plastic. We talked about not just the microwave, but any type of heating food. Don't put hot food into plastic. Don't put food in plastic. Let's just start in that line.
Right.
We replaced all of our plastic with stainless steel, and they're on the pricier side. So what I would say is start with glass because it's not as pricey. It's a little heavier though. And my teenagers were like, it's too heavy to take to school. So I got them little metal boxes that I found on sale. And then I was like, oh, this is great. It's much lighter. You're only have the heft is just the food. So I replaced all of our materials with that. And it does have a plastic top. As long as the food's not touching it, I'm okay with that. Because it's not going to off gas spontaneously. It's when it touches and it's heated.
Okay. That's very interesting. Because part of me was saying price, right? And I think about the cups and the plates and things like that, the bottles. But man, you make an investment in a filter for your home or something you carry around. Ultimately, you'll save money because you're not buying that anymore. Right. You clean your plates that you have at home instead of using the plates that you buy for convenience. Don't have to wash the dishes, but then ultimately you won't be investing in those plates and cups, so you'll probably save money. So I can see how long term it'll make more sense. It's just the habit of, okay, now I have to wash the dishes versus throwing them, having to, just have a paper or plastic plate. So that all makes
really
sense.
Hard.
Yeah. So I think it's this requires like culture change. You have other people in the house who have their own opinions. So you have to kind of negotiate with them. So that's very helpful. So let's go to chapter 4, deceptive beauty. We talked about the environmental work group website. You talked in that chapter also about the importance of washing new clothing. You talked about some concerns related to dry cleaning. Sometimes when I record this, I'm wearing scrubs. Since the pandemic, I've been a scrubs guy. I feel bad because I love the people at the dry cleaners. They're great. They're a great family. We gave them a lot of business, but it changed with the pandemic, and I've been wearing scrubs ever since. So I guess, a lot of people, particularly professional folk, they use the dry cleaners like regularly, like I did. But there's problems with the dry cleaner. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what concerns we should have as related to the dry cleaners and what toxins do we need to worry about there.
Ignorance is bliss, Tony. That's all I have to say. Yes. Knowledge is power. Ignorance is bliss. You're going to land somewhere on that spectrum. So the clothing used to dry clean our clothes is formaldehyde or some other form of it. So when people say to me, some people might be thinking, oh, but I go to a green cleaner. It says green.
Mhm.
So I called him. I called the green cleaners in town, called a
Mhm.
couple of them. And I said, so what are you using? And he was super proud of what he was using. It's like blah, blah, blah. He told me what it was. And I wrote it down and then I looked it up. And it's a different form of formaldehyde. And I was like, crap. So at that point, I was like, all right, if I can't wash it, we're just going to ruin it in the washing machine because I can't. It's, first of all, it's expensive, but really, formaldehyde is what they put on you to preserve you when you die.
Right.
You don't want to be putting that on your body when you're alive and trying to be healthy. It
No.
is not good for you.
No.
No, no. So,
Oh.
yeah. So, pretty much anytime you do dry cleaning, it's formaldehyde.
All right. I hope none of my listeners are in the dry cleaning business, but it is
But it's
something.
not healthy for them either.
Yeah, could you imagine? Just they spend I literally um I'm not a big fan of guns, but I, did a conceal to carry, right? Because
Sure.
you just have to be safe, it seems these days. And I go there and I just it was just the I guess the gunpowder. And I was like, is this
Gunpowder has lead.
yeah. So I'm like, what's something's not good about this. So I talked to my son. I said, there's gotta be another way for us to learn how to use this gun for safety in a way
Mhm.
that's safer. But that doesn't sound like a good idea. And so I could only imagine people that have to do this for a living every day and what that means for them. So again, as we walk through this episode, guys, it's about mitigating risks. Some stuff you have to do. We gave the example of microwave and things like that. Some stuff you absolutely don't have to do. So as you think about what you're going to do and not do, don't be overwhelmed again. Just say,
One
okay,
step at a time.
a step at a time. So let's go to um, the next chapter, and you talked about in chapter 5 the invisible dangers, that exist in our home,
Mhm.
and there's so many things, right? When you think about those invisible dangers in our home, are there any that come to mind that people can kind of start right away? We did a video short where you kind of shared your thoughts on, how to get started. But as it relates to your home, where would you ask people to get started?
I would recommend, here's the thing, it'll save you money. When you look at your home, air quality is critical. Back to that 1989 study, air
Hmm.
quality related to 1 in 6 deaths. So the quality of your air at home. If you want to get started, I would recommend stop buying and stop using air fresheners
Mm.
because unless they are based in essential oils, which are truly derived from a natural source,
Mm.
if they're not essential oil, 100% essential oil based, what you're getting are fragrances and perfumes, and they're cloaked in a oils and plastics that keep them stinky, make the
Hmm.
smell stay around. And these are not only bad for your health, but they're bad for your respiratory system. So things like essential oils, whatever flavor or smell you like, if you like lemon or peppermint or lavender, whatever, you can get them. You can get diffusers with them. So I would recommend not spraying Febreze and not spraying
Hmm.
all the things. And worst comes to worst, it's funny, we had a new cooktop because our old cooktop died. It was dead. Like no matter
Hmm.
what we did, the guy came out to fix it and he's like, I can't fix this. You need to buy a new one. So we got a new cooktop and it's much more powerful than our other cooktop. So promptly, my 18-year-old scorches a pan.
Hmm.
And the next day, my babysitter scorches a pan. She doesn't just
Hmm.
scorch it though. She actually had put it on and cooked it and then went up and folded the laundry and it
Hmm.
boiled.
Mm.
And when she came down, the pan was so scorched that she couldn't even salvage it. So we come home that night and we're like, what's going on here? Like it
Mhm.
smelled like a house fire. And we walk in and it looks good, but it smells like a house fire. So we got the story. 3 days later, it still smells like a house fire. And I
Mm.
said to my babysitter, how about we open I got some containers of baking soda.
Mhm.
And she put them all over the house. We opened the windows, of course. And she also made soup, that replaced the smell. But it took about a week after we added in the
Wow.
cans, but nothing's going to mask that. You have to absorb it. You have to let it come out, but you really can't mask it with air fresheners because they're very unhealthy for you.
Mm. Wow. And
Yeah.
baking soda, that was kind of a simple
Yeah.
way, and that sounds like an affordable way to help
Yes.
with
Yes.
odors. But you're hurting some people, my wife included. She likes you a lot, by the way. She makes
Not
because she likes.
anymore. And no more glass of wine with dinner. That's it. She's
Well,
done with
oh
me.
my God, yeah, she's gonna have problems. She liked you from the beginning because she loves the title of your book, and the fact that she's like, "What are you searching on the internet?" I think I shared that last time. I was like, "No, I promise she's gonna be a guest."
Yeah, right. Don't
But
search for Dirty Girl if you want to buy the book. Do not search Dirty Girl Detox book or Dirty
right,
Girl
right.
Trubow.
That's
Don't look for
right.
Dirty Girl.
Yeah,
You're
it's
going
not
to go
gonna.
down a rabbit hole. You're going to get a computer virus. I'll just say that way.
That's right. Exactly. And I'm gonna tell you something. I don't even. I mean, what you just shared is so obvious, but it's not obvious. Like, um, I don't think I had thought about something like that. And my wife definitely likes the house to smell a certain way. So this is going to be an eye opener for her, and I think for a lot of people who just
Yeah.
hadn't thought about it, which is kind of what's the point of this conversation.
Right.
Just touching on things you hadn't thought about. It blows your mind. You're like, okay, what can I do? Of course, I know about baking soda, as an example. So maybe I can transition to that.
Or essential oils, right? You can, a
Yes,
little thing is like 12, $13, and that little thing will last you forever.
forever.
It'll
I,
last
I
forever.
I didn't know anything about essential oils until I did my master's in functional medicine. So absolutely agree. And we do have essential oils, and we'll be transitioning to that for sure.
Oh, you
The,
got to get your wife's buy-in on that one, Tony. You
yeah,
cannot just be like, honey, we're cheating. Like, you
that's
have to get
true.
her buy-in or you're going to be in deep doo-doo.
Okay, you
Back
did
to the
say.
toxic relationship thing. You're going to
There
be
you
in
go.
trouble.
Yeah, I don't want to mess
Big
that up.
trouble.
But I have a pretty
Ooh.
good marriage, so let's keep it that way.
Yes,
Okay.
totally.
So okay, so let's
But that would
think
be a
about.
nice present, actually.
You think so?
You get your
Okay.
favorite, whatever her favorite scents. Like, hey, honey, do you like this or that? And then you get her an essential oil set.
Yeah.
It's a
That's a
present. It's like wrapped up and it's visually pleasing. And then you're like a good husband because you got her present and
That's right.
because you can be like, so how would you feel about replacing that, which is super
Right.
toxic, with this, which you love?
That's right. That's a great
Okay,
idea.
what's her name? Don't listen to this episode.
That's right. Okay.
Shh, don't
I
listen.
won't. I usually I will send the episodes to her, so I won't do that. I'm just
No,
gonna
no,
do
no.
it.
Surprise
Yeah.
her.
Yeah, I'm gonna surprise her. So thanks for that tip. And the rest of the world I know, but she won't. So that's perfect.
Yeah.
So now another group of people in my life that are important, speaking of, the lady in your life, is your mom, right? So
Yeah.
chapter 6 is entitled "But Wait, You Really Can Blame Your Parents," right? So this seems to be in the space of things that you can't control because you have parents that you're just born to. But in that chapter, you talked about the role our genetics play in our detoxification journey. So speak a little bit about genetics, detoxification, and help us understand why that's important.
All right. So the first thing I'll say is that my parents are divorced, so they're only together when we have major family events, and they get
Mhm.
along great. Like, they'll sit in the corner and chat for an hour or two. So they're at a family event, and I sat down with them both and I said, I love you both dearly. And I just need to tell you, you really should never have reproduced because your genes together in me are terrible. And they were like, what? They were like, okay, what do we do with that? I said,
Right,
well, I'm
not
grateful you
much.
reproduced, but I'm glad there was only one because it was a really bad combination. You really shouldn't be doing that. So your genes are your book of life. And
Mhm,
having said that, they're only responsible for 10% of your health, meaning 90% of your health and your medical issues are in your hands. You
mhm,
have control over this. You can't say to me, because I have these genes, I'm going to be sick. No, because you have these genes, you're at risk of being sick. Let's optimize the rest of you so that those genes don't express themselves. Okay.
okay,
So the probability of getting a disease will increase or decrease depending on your genetics and your epigenetics, which are these methylation factors on the side of the genes that determine whether that gene turns on or not. However, it's also impacted by your thoughts and your food and your sleep and your lifestyle and your early childhood events. And all of that goes into the soup that's your blended soup. But the genes are
Mm.
only 10%. Having said that, this is why I said to my parents, you guys really should never have reproduced, because I know I really did say that to them. They were like, that's really
That is
weird.
funny.
But having said that, my genetics are terrible. So I have
Mhm.
2 copies of the MTHFR gene, which impairs my ability to methylate B vitamins, increases my risk for cancer, heart disease, um, emotional psychological dysfunction,
Mhm.
diabetes. So I have 2 copies of that. I have 2 copies
Mm.
for celiac disease, and I have celiac disease. So by the time I figured all this out, that horse had left the barn, right? The
Mm.
early childhood events, the diet, the lifestyle, the med school, the stress. I developed celiac sometime between the age of 15 and, excuse me, probably 25, although I didn't know it till I was 35.
Mhm.
And so the genetics impact our ability. And without that, I couldn't get celiac. So I have 2 copies for that. I have 2 copies for vitamin D deficiency, which means, and vitamin D, even though it's called vitamin D, it really should be called hormone D. It's a hormone. It regulates the tight junctions in your gut, which regulates how protected you are from the outside world. It regulates your mood. It's implicated in blood sugar control and endocrine function. I mean, you name it, and vitamin D is implicated. And I am a very poor absorber. So that with the celiac is like a hungry and tired
Mhm.
toddler. It's a very bad combination.
Mm.
So I take a lot of vitamin D all the time, regardless of winter, summer, spring, or how much sun I got, because I'm a crappy absorber and don't convert it that well anyway. So I also got a couple of genes for poor detox that are separate. So those things set the stage, right? But then we enhance the stage with multiple mercury fillings and
Mhm.
adverse childhood events or ACEs.
Mm.
And then standard American diet. I'm a product of the 70s, and
Mhm.
we had microwaves happen in my childhood, and we got microwavable food, and it was amazing, and we did it all the time. And then I
Mhm.
went to med school, and then I was a stress ball. So by the time I got
Mm.
to med school and residency, I had trashed my gut and was celiac. So all these things play in together. So when you look at it, the genes set the stage, but you can either light it up or not.
Yeah. Uh, I always remember that quote that your genes like load the gun, but your environment pulls the trigger. Speaking,
Yeah.
going back to that gunpowder analogy, and I think it's important. And I think that's also reassuring to hear you say, "Hey, it's 10%, guys." See, I've heard like people quote, "Oh, it's 50%," and I
Uh,
already know that that's not true because I have seen people. Even when I wrote my book, "Fix Your Diet, Fix Your Diabetes," one of the people who commented on it, her name is Angela. She's a nurse practitioner who worked in my health system for a while, and she said everybody has diabetes in her family, like literally everybody. And because of the decisions she made after she acquired knowledge, it is something that doesn't exist. So I just think that it's important that people control their controllables and don't feel that you're destined for anything just because you have a certain genetic makeup. And it's just interesting. You mentioned the gene that I hadn't learned about until my functional medicine training, which was the MTHFR gene. And it's nice to just know what you know for you. So maybe the next person doesn't have to supplement for that, with B vitamins or whatever, but it's nice to know that that helps you. So
yeah.
that's why it's so important that as we take our journey, learn just enough early enough in your life so you can have the kind of quality life that you're seeking. And I think that's important. So let's go to chapter 7. Diagnosis you're dirty, and you know, I'm always curious how to evaluate for my patients how to know if they're a dirty girl or a dirty boy in my case, right? So
Mhm.
so talk a little bit about just some basic principles about how to evaluate that.
Okay. I'm a huge data person. I'm into test, don't guess. But
Mhm.
having said that, It can add up. So
Mhm.
let's start with I don't want to test. I just want to look and see if I am at risk.
Mhm.
And my response is, okay, are you human? Yes. Do you live on this earth? Yes. Okay, you're toxic.
That's right.
So you can pretty much count on. Or I'm sorry, I missed one thing. Do you have any medical issue, complaint, or problem? If the
Right.
answer is yes, head to toe. I don't
That's
care
right.
what it is. If you got a yes to that question, then okay, congratulations, you're toxic. So there's there's this stop filling the pump up, like don't drink alcohol, and don't
Mhm.
poison the air in your home, and do filter your water, and don't drink from plastic bottles. There's lots of stuff to clean up what you're putting in your body. And then there's the one, how am I going to get this out of me? And the nice thing is that obviously your genetics play a role, but there are some foundational things you can do that set and light the stage for success. So get enough rest, de-stress, don't be a stress ball, get
Mhm.
rid of toxic relationships,
Mhm.
um, improve your liver's ability to detox by not drinking alcohol because that
Mhm.
stresses it, and then giving it what it needs to work. So there's minerals, nutrients, the B vitamins, the antioxidants, the what's contained in protein supports phase two in the liver. So
Mhm.
there's phase one and phase two, and minerals, nutrients, antioxidants, protein all support phase one and phase two. So
Mhm.
support the liver in doing what it needs to do. Glutathione, N-acetylcysteine, alpha lipoic acid. These are all things that support the body's ability to detox. So when you look at the environmental toxins and fiber, which is in the gut, but when you look at environmental toxins, they all respond to a pretty small like bucket of things. So niacin, which also helps with heart health, uh, B12, folate, glutathione, sauna.
Mhm.
It's a pretty small list, right? So you can assume that you have environmental toxins, and you do your best to decrease your exposure. But like I said, you're always going to be exposed to plastics, and they're cancer promoting and endocrine disrupting. So you you got to balance it out by living on this earth. So assume you're toxic. That's the I don't want to test pathway. And then there's the I want to test pathway. And if you go down that path, you can test for heavy metals,
Mhm.
mycotoxins, which are the toxins that when you're exposed to mold, these toxins are living in you.
Mhm.
You can also test for the range of environmental toxins. These are all urine tests. You can
Mhm.
test for pesticides, herbicides, glyphosate, insecticides. So you can test and then start to systematically remove what you're positive for. I mean, obviously, I was positive for tons of stuff, a child of the 70s, mercury exposure, um, lead paint, lead gasoline, came from a mother with lead, like all that stuff. Lived in moldy homes, and had exposure in moldy dorms and schools, and all that exposure. 1 in 2 homes in the United States has had water damage. So, odds are pretty good you have mycotoxins.
Hmm.
And then environmental toxins, like I said, kind of funnel into this little small bucket of intervention. So it's I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's manageable to get rid of them,
Mhm.
test and get rid of them.
That's cool. If we are in a conventional practice, and my assumption is that some clinicians may not be comfortable ordering those, uh, are there ways for people to order those tests outside of that
Yes.
conventional practice?
Yeah, both, I think Avexia, EVEXIA, and Rupa Health, I
Mhm.
believe, allow you to go direct to consumer and get these tests, and they have a physician on staff who will sign off on the testing. But then you're going to need to work with someone. So
Right.
you can get the testing, but you probably don't want to be doing a heavy metal detox on your own. You definitely don't want to be doing it. You can't do a provoke test without a provider anyway. So
That's
you
right.
can go kind of down the path, but I would absolutely recommend working with someone because you can harm yourself. You know,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
not going to harm yourself by taking fiber, and you're not going
Mhm.
to harm yourself by sweating, and you're not going to harm yourself by
Right.
getting enough rest and improving your food, but you could harm yourself by trying to aggressively detox your body.
That's
So
right.
kind of decide what's safe on your own, and the not safe category, I would definitely work with someone.
Yeah, and I think if you're working with a conventionally trained doc and you need some extra support in this space, that's when you want to say, well, are there functional medicine docs in my area?
Yeah.
And then you can kind of go from there And because even talking about, you mentioned the liver's two phases of detoxification, right? And they work together to eliminate things that are excreted. Some of this language,
Hmm.
some of these talking points are not common knowledge. So if you say, I need to detoxify my liver, what are the amino acids, glutathione, trace minerals, B vitamins that I need to do that? And if you don't do it right, again, you can get too much of that. It can cause other problems downstream. So I think I appreciate you kind of leveling this in a way that says, hey, let's be careful. We want to do the right stuff, but we're not trying to do the right stuff and then cause harm,
Right.
because we're completely on our own. So I like that as well. So
Yeah, yeah, and let's just talk about conventional doctors for a minute.
yeah,
Conventional doctors are great.
yeah,
I was conventionally trained.
yeah, me too. Yep.
And so it's not bad to be a conventional doctor. It's simply that you have different tools in your toolbox. So
Exactly.
conventional medicine doesn't give you the tools to deal with these conversations. It gives you
That's
tools to
right.
deal with an emergency, something that needs a medication, something that needs a surgical intervention, a delivery. Those are conventional paths. What
Yeah.
we're talking about is not just survival, but really thriving
Hmm.
and bringing your health to the next level. And it's just a different approach. So
It is.
that's just not the toolbox that they have.
Yeah.
That's all.
And I still refer to functional medicine because I'm conventionally trained. Just got a master's last year. So I'm still
Congratulations.
trying. Yes, thank you. And so I'm just starting to integrate. And because I don't have all the tools in my system to do this work, I have to still collaborate and work
Hmm.
with people. But man, isn't it cool to have somebody in front of you who's struggling and you know how to point them in a different direction? They've been to Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic and in your health system, they're still struggling. And
Yeah.
then you do something that's completely off the path and they find healing. So that's why I think this is great. So just so you know, chapter 8 is probably going to be my wife's favorite titled chapter because This Girl Is on Fire is one of her favorite songs.
Me too. Go
Really?
Alicia Keys. I love
Oh
that
my
song.
gosh, she loves it. And
That and Rise Up by Andra Day. Those are like my
oh,
two all-time
absolutely.
favorite songs.
Yes, it's just great songs to inspire.
And
And in this,
Fergie, Big Girls Don't Cry. Those are the three
oh
top
yeah,
ones.
I'm familiar with that as well. So I love that. So in that chapter, we touched on this already. You talked about testing air. So talk a little bit about are you saying everybody should have a way to make sure their air is clean, or do we need to test the air to determine if it's okay? I mean, how should somebody approach their air quality?
I am a huge believer of knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
I've said that before. So I would say this is a basic human right for clean air and water. And given the state of events, you might not be able to automatically have that. So if you live
Mm-hmm.
near a power plant or a processing plant or a farm that is not organic and sprays chemicals, or a golf course where they spray glyphosate to make that monoculture. Nature
Mm-hmm.
loves variety and diversity. Nature does not like a monoculture. So you have to spray crazy amounts of glyphosate, which is cancer promoting, microbiome disrupting, to get that grass looking all the same.
Mm-hmm.
So if you live near that, or if you live near a highway where the particles of the tires are degrading as the tires hit, and the air quality is worse within a half mile of any major road. So if you live in any of those situations, your air quality might not be as good as ideal. So, or if you cook a lot and you don't have a vent, there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ways that your air quality can be worse. If you have mold in your house, if you have lots of air fresheners in your house and you're polluting the air, your quality may not be good. So, to the best of your ability, test and resolve,
Mm-hmm.
test and filter to the best of your financial ability. Okay, so
That's
if
cool.
that's opening the windows, that's free.
Mm-hmm.
If it's
That's cool.
getting a whole a room filter, I'd say filter the rooms that you spend the most time in. So
Mm-hmm.
before COVID, I would say just get a filter for your bedroom. But if you're working from home, you may want to get a filter in the room that you spend all the time working in. Maybe it's your
Mm-hmm.
bedroom, you're psyched because then you only have to buy one filter. But if it's in two separate rooms, get two filters. And then maybe to the best of your budget would include a whole house air filter. Do the best that your budget allows for, and then don't sweat the rest, because the stress in itself is pretty toxic for you. So don't stress about what you're not doing. Only take action on what you can.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. Please continue to think interconnected. And I
Yeah.
love that way of thinking, connecting stress and making sure I don't want any of this conversation to stress anybody out because it's so overwhelming, but it's just knowledge. I just real quick, ionizing filters versus, I mean, do you have any understanding about the benefits versus, I mean, do you use those at all? Does it really matter versus like a HEPA filter?
Yeah, I like HEPA because they can filter out particles down
Mm-hmm.
to whatever, point oh oh
Mm-hmm.
0.001. So I like HEPA filters. I just can't speak on the ionizing filters or don't
Yeah.
know enough about them. But go for a double, right? Get a HEPA ionizing, and you're good.
Right. Exactly.
But I would say the best of your ability, go for best in class to the best of your financial ability, whatever
That'll
that
work.
is.
I like that. So thank you for that girl is on fire. That's once my wife, maybe down the road, I'll just carve out that part of the interview and let her hear that part. But again, we're walking through the book together, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Chapter 9, a clean girl in a dirty world, right? And again, for all the guys who are checking this out, this is for you too.
Yes.
My doc is just more familiar. She takes care of women. She's OB-GYN, so she's always
Yeah.
thinking about women as she approaches this.
And it was my
So
story. That is really, it's Dirty
yes,
Girl because it was my story.
yeah,
So it's not to ignore or decimate or think the men are less. It's more just Dirty Guy is not as catchy. It's
right.
just
Well, you
not.
better know
It's just
that.
not that like people wouldn't be like banging down the door
That's
to do
right.
Dirty Guy.
That's
Not just not that interesting.
no, it's
Um,
not.
so it's
That's
just
smart.
it flows.
That's right. That's right. So you talked about in that chapter, certain things we have to ditch, right? Now, what do you say to if you want to impress a doc who's low carb, you're going to say ditch, make sure the sugar's not in your life. So from your perspective, why do you consider sugar such a toxic substance? I think a lot of people who follow me understand the benefits of cutting back on that, but from your perspective, why is that true?
Another let me count the ways, Tony. Okay, so the first thing is if it's not organic, it's got pesticides, herbicides, insecticides in it. So you're getting a
Mm,
concentrated dose of toxins when you eat sugar.
mm-hmm,
But then you're not just eating a spoonful of sugar, you're eating it often in something.
mm-hmm,
So you're eating it most often in a processed carb or a candy, cake, candy, cookie, bread, pasta, beer, wine, cereal. You're eating it in something, and that's
mm-hmm,
most of the time processed. So you're getting that second dose of the chemicals. Glyphosate is the most commonly used herbicide in the world. Its use is
mm-hmm,
doubling about every 7 years. And it's cancer promoting, microbiome disrupting. It's bad for the soil. It's bad for the bees. It's bad for the birds. It's bad for us. So whenever you're eating a processed carb, even the organic grains are often contaminated. So you have the sugar, and then you have, sorry, I hit my mic twice.
that's
Then
okay.
you have the processed carb. Now, so you're getting these exposures, but then the impact on your body is also harmful because the sugar causes your adrenals to be stressed in
Mm-hmm,
whatever form. So if it's alcohol or wine or straight up sugar, processed carb, whatever it is, it's causing your adrenals to be stressed. When your adrenals are stressed, remember, it says to the body, oh, geez, a lion's going to eat us because we only
mm-hmm,
have the on off switch. We can put out less cortisol, but basically either we're putting out cortisol or we're not.
mm-hmm,
The lion's going to eat us or it isn't. There's no sort of halfway here. So if your adrenals think that a lion's going to eat you, you tell the liver, don't detox, we're busy. We have to instead pull out the sugar from our stored liver stores, and you'll bump up your blood sugar. You're going to put blood sugar to the running muscles, which are your legs. But if this goes on for too long, a great book is Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Robert
mm-hmm,
Sapolsky. I just
mm-hmm.
have to tell you, the font size is like 8 or 9. So read it with your cheaters because I could not read it with my
Okay,
contacts in. It's tiny.
gotcha.
So anyway, it talks about the long term impact of unopposed stress, and cortisol ends up being midsection deposition of fat,
Mm-hmm,
aberrations and abnormalities in our blood sugar, risk of diabetes,
Mhm.
so cardiovascular disease. So the sugar is one of the things that sets this whole supply chain down going. So sugar is pretty nasty at a lot of different levels. Then get to the gut. When
Mhm.
you have a gut that's exposed to sugar, what happens is you feed candida. Candida is not
Mm.
a bacteria, it's a fungus,
Mhm.
and it doesn't get killed when you take antibiotics. In fact, it grows. So anytime you take antibiotics, it's happy because all of the things keeping it in check are down. Now candida grows and it throws off the bacterial balance in the gut. You
Mhm.
can get gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, weight gain, acne, hair loss, brain fog, whole list litany of things. And it mimics, it all looks the same, right? You kind of start to look at, oh, it looks like PCOS, or it looks like insulin resistance, or it looks like toxins issue. They all kind of look the same because they're all the same issue.
Mhm.
So sugar at multiple levels is difficult and harmful for us to deal with, process, dance with. Throws us off.
Yeah, it does. And, again, as a metabolic health doc, I don't like anything that over produces the need for insulin. And therefore, sugar is probably number one on that list. So I
Yeah,
appreciate avoiding that as much as possible, and just understanding that sugar is not like if you suck on sugar cane, it's probably not going to hurt you, right? But
it's a special treat, right? You go
yeah,
somewhere where they have sugar. We got it
right,
when we were, where were we? Peru. We got
right.
a huge, it looked like a staff, a
Yeah,
sugar cane, and we cut into it, and we maybe ate like, there were 10 of us on the trip, so maybe we ate
that's
like
right.
this much.
That's right.
And then the rest of it, we were like, okay, we gave it to the guide. But yeah,
That's right.
you have a piece and you chew it, and it's
That's
interesting.
right. And then think what it takes to take that sugar cane and turn it into this powder that you essentially turn a food item into a drug, essentially, when you concentrate it. So I think that's another way of looking at it. So we're at chapter 10, and I really appreciate you walking through each chapter. And there's so much more information. We're just skimming the surface, but
Right.
I just
Read the
think
book.
yeah, exactly. So, and then you'll get it and use it as a resource. So it's not just about the food, is what that one's entitled. And we just talked about a form of, I would say a drug, but let's call sugar food for sake of argument. So it's not just about the food. Talk a little bit about, you know, cleaning our homes with green ingredients, right? So, I mean, if anything in my home is toxic, it's got to be the things that clean the house, right? So, how can someone get started on their journey, even just with that part of their home? We talked about the other parts, but what's green? What can they use that's green that'll help them keep their house clean?
Okay. Um, I'm 99% sure I have this on our Dirty Girl Detox website. They can sign up for our toxin free living guide, and that has recipes, and it has how do you clean, what do you clean your house with. So
Mm-hmm.
on the website you have to sign up for the newsletter and then you get the guide.
Cool.
Okay.
We'll have a
So
link.
dirtygirldetox.com, again, Dirty Girl Detox, not Dirty Girl. So yeah, right, always a caveat. So there's recipes in that for how do you make clean products, and then we go back to um, water,
Mm-hmm.
vinegar, essential oil.
Mm.
You kind of go back to basics. But
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, Tony, I was snookered. I mean, I grew up with this product that my mom said was so clean, and I never questioned it. I never
Mm-hmm.
thought about it. And after we published the book, I mean, we're talking like a couple, like 6 months after we started the process about, we wrote the book, then you have to edit the
Mm-hmm.
book. So the whole process takes a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say about a year after we actually wrote the book, right after we published it, it occurred to me, oh my gosh, the stuff we've been cleaning our house with for literally years, and we have a gallon of it,
Mm-hmm.
it is not clean. It never occurred to me to even think about it. So the first thing I would
Mm-hmm.
say is question everything. Don't be
Mm-hmm.
like your detox doc who is like kind of oblivious and busy and just has things on autopilot. So I will say, ask if you're not someone who's going to make your own cleaning products. My favorite brand is Aspen Clean.
Mm-hmm.
They're environmental working group certified, and you can get dishwashing detergent, floor, glass, bathroom, uh, washer dryer. You can get all of it there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they do auto ship, which is lovely because you don't have to think about it and it's clean.
That's right.
But if you want to make it yourself, you can. I'm not a projects person because I'm a little bit overwhelmed most of the time. So
Mm-hmm.
in your home, the easiest way to start leveling up is what you're running out of, look it up on EWG, see if maybe you hit the jackpot and it's clean, but if it isn't, you can get started on leveling up.
Cool. That's a very useful website. And I like the practicality of wait till you run out. I tell people even people are really ready to get started on their journey to reverse diabetes, for example, type 2. And they'll just say, no, doc, I'm just going to clean the pantry. Others will say, okay, I'm going to get through what's here. And I like that approach because it's more practical. And plus everything costs so much these days. You don't want to do excessive wasting. So this has been very insightful. And I really appreciate all of it. Just as we kind of get close to wrap up, when you think about the easiest thing to change and the hardest thing to change, maybe even personally, what's been your experience with this? Is so easy to change, just do it. This is going to be hard, guys. So just be prepared because it's going to be a struggle. What would you say?
I would say the easiest things to change are the doingness things, the things that you run out of and you buy a new one. Because that's just it's a one behavior and you're done. The hardest things to change are things like don't engage in toxic relationships. Don't be a stress ball. Take care of yourself and get enough rest and rejuvenation and sleep. Eat food that your body likes. Those are difficult for people. So those are falling into the beingness and the choices category, as opposed to just do something and then you don't have to think about it again. These are things you got to think about ongoingly.
Well, nothing you said doesn't make sense to me and my audience. So thank you for that. And I know when we had episode 75, you shared how you're going to protect your nest. I guess we'll ask that question again since it's been a while. Over the next 12 months, when you think about protecting your nest, what areas are you giving additional attention over the next year?
Yeah, I would say air quality for me is big on protecting my nest because I am personally overwhelmed with options and haven't yet pulled the trigger on such terrible language. I haven't yet made a choice on what's going to work best in our family.
Yeah.
So air quality, and then ensuring that I move my body regularly and get enough rest and richen and deepen my relationships.
Nice.
Those are the ways that I would say I'm gonna grow and develop.
That's fair. I have a guy in my health system, Dr. Mike Fogg, Fogg. I did an interview with him. He was the first African American president of the College of Allergy. He's an awesome guy, very smart. I did a video. I'm going to share that with you. I did a video podcast with him, but I think we did a video short talking about air, and he may have given some advice about what to use. I think he was a fan of ionizing filters, so I'll share that with you and obviously with the audience, so they'll know maybe what his advice was back then.
Yeah, I'd love to know that.
Yeah, and like you, I hadn't done that yet, so I'm actually where you are. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I'm blessed with resources, so I could probably get a decent quality one. So we'll see how that goes. So we're wrapping up. Of course, we want to just remind the audience how they can find you and your wonderful book. So what you say?
Thank you. So if you want to go for the book, the best place to get it is Amazon. And you go to Amazon and look for Dirty Girl Detox Book Trubow. It's bright yellow. You can't miss it.
Yes.
And actually, in fact, our publisher, when they were looking at the books they had published that year, singled that one out and said, we wrote a book called Dirty Girl because it was bright yellow and it jumped out at him. So Amazon's the best place for that. And then for the guide, you can go to dirtygirldetox.com and sign up for the newsletter. And then I'd love for people to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Wendie Trubow MD. And we also have the Dirty Girl Detox Facebook page, and our clinic is 5journeys.com. So there's a lot of ways to get involved. Yeah. That's the clinic. And then the national brand is the Dirty Girl brand.
And we'll make sure to provide all those links. And I'm feeling a little less dirty after having this conversation. So appreciate you. I know we were both busy when we recorded this, but I am so thankful we had another conversation. Who knows? Maybe episode 3 is in the air at some point because there's so much to talk about. And I just hope my audience utilizes your great resource and starts their journey as well. So thank you so much for joining us on the Protecting Your Nest podcast.
Tony, my pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
I appreciate you. And for those who enjoyed this episode, hopefully after today's episode, all the dirty girls and boys will have a clear path to start or continue the process of removing many of the toxins that have led to poor metabolic health. The good news is that experts like Dr. Trubow have made it a little easier by creating a great resource. Her book, Dirty Girl, as a nice foundation to get us started, but there's no need to wait. Start your journey today, whether it's what you eat, drink, or some other environmental toxin. You are now empowered to make it a little easier for your body to run like the machine it was intended to be. So I kind of started my journey with some natural toothpaste, and even on my link tree, I have a link to Pharaoh Skincare, which uses a natural, ingredients to help our skin stay nice and fresh looking. So I think we have so many things we can consider and use. And let's start now. Let's get excited about this and start now. That's why I started this episode by just suggesting that you find one or two areas that you can get started with right away. And now that we've made it to the end of this episode, I want you to act now. And I promise if you do that, your body will thank and reward you as you start your journey. So, and if you enjoyed today's episode, all the resources that Dr. Trubow suggested, her book, etc., make sure you utilize them. You may have somebody in your life who is very interested in healing, and they may have struggled, and what they've done so far hasn't helped them, and maybe they just need to detoxify. So let's give them that gift of healing, and hopefully that'll lead them along the way. So I hope today's episode has added value to your life and knowledge, and filled some, maybe some knowledge gap that you had about the toxin story. And if it did, share some comments, talk about what you may start to detoxify with if you're on YouTube, and if you're on the podcast app, maybe you can make some comments there as well so other people can hear your story as well. So until we connect again, I thank you for joining us. And until the next episode, continue to be safe, be well, and continue to protect your nest. You've been listening to Protecting Your Nest with Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com.